What the hell gives the right of government or anyone else to determine who or how many people we have visit us in our own homes? And as I just say that this whole thing has just been far more disastrous to humankind, to democracy, to freedom than the virus actually is.
This is Monica Smith. I'm about to show you an interview with George Christensen, who has been an Australian Member of Parliament since 2010. Recently, he has been very outspoken about the concept of vaccine passports in this country.
I am going to be railing against any attempt to have any vaccination passport, digital passport, whatever you'd like to call it, that segregates Australians into haves and have-nots and denies them jobs, denies them services and corporations, denies them access to certain areas. That is just wrong. It is discriminatory.
A few days after this interview, George announced that he is resigning from politics because he thinks politics in Australia is broken.
I hate to use the analogy, but it was in Nazi Germany where the Gestapo was famous for saying, "Show us your papers." It sounds very, very similar like that to me, and I don't want to see it in my country.
So George Christensen MP, thank you for joining me. I was prompted to contact you. I've been watching you a lot for a long time, but I was prompted specifically because I saw a post about you being adamantly against the vaccine passport. So explain to me why you're so against it, because a lot of people might think this is our ticket to getting back to normal. So why are you so against it?
Yeah. Well, I'm against it because really this is just another restriction on our freedoms. And quite honestly, nobody, no government official, no corporation has the right to know our private medical history. There have been worse viruses than COVID-19 before, but we've never had some vaccine passport to enable us to go and undertake some particular service or jump on a plane or to go into a restaurant or cafe. This stuff is, I hate to use the analogy, but it was in Nazi Germany where the Gestapo was famous for saying, "Show us your papers." It sounds very, very similar like that to me, and I don't want to see it in my country.
And do you think we will be able to stop it?
Well, we'll be able to stop it if there is political pressure. But there is a lot of pressure the other way, a lot of pressure from, quite frankly, a fearful sector of the public, pressure from others that want to get back to normal and just say, well, whatever to get back to normal, we'll accept it. Pressure from international organizations. I noticed that Communist China is actually pushing this as some sort of worldwide solution. There's talks about bodies like the United Nations getting involved in doing it. There's going to be immense pressure on Australia and many other nations to comply and just go down this route, but we should push back for the sake of freedom.
So if you're against the COVID passports, how do you feel about, for example, quarantine workers being fired because they don't want to get the vaccine, or also, ADF personnel being told that they will get given a pen pushing job if they don't take it, etc. How do you feel about those things, which are definitely happening already in Australia?
Yep. Look, my penultimate view on it is that it's wrong, that no one should be forced to undertake anything medical for fear of losing their job or fear of being restricted from doing their job. I probably do temper it with there may be arguments that healthcare workers and aged care workers and others that are exposed to highly vulnerable sectors of our community that they may need to vaccinate, but I'm even hesitant to actually agree to that because, again, I say that there's been worse viruses in the past and we haven't brought in mandates for that. We haven't allowed the corporate sector or any form of government. I mean, in Queensland, right? I'm from Queensland. In Queensland, we've had the education minister coming out and saying she might not even allow kids to be sent to school if they don't vaccinate. Well, when did the last kid in Australia or in the world die of COVID-19? This is sort of ridiculous stuff. So I'm very, very loath to give anything on this track, and it actually disturbs me to hear that that sort of stuff is going on right now.
I mean, the TGA itself cannot even confirm that this vaccine will actually stop the spread. They can't confirm that we won't have to wear masks anymore. We won't have to get second and third and fourth and whatever. So even though you said, healthcare workers might have to get it because they're in a vulnerable situation, like the actual science behind the actual vaccine itself hasn't even been proven to work. So, do you really think healthcare workers should still be at least not forced, but coerced to get it?
I don't. I guess I probably can see the argument, right, for people in those sectors being required to have it, but I probably still land on the side of should be a free choice. There should be no coercion. People should check the facts on these vaccines, and if they want to take it, they take it. If they don't want to take it, don't take it. That should be the individual's choice. No vaccine is actually, well, yeah, I would say that's correct. No vaccine has 100% effectiveness. And in fact, I was talking to a major corporation in the medical world the other day that told me even the flu vaccines, the best flu vaccines they have in the market, only have 60% effectiveness. And they've been analysed, reanalysed, researched and re-researched over and over again to get it the best they can. So, yeah, we can't expect these COVID-19 vaccines, which have been delivered only in a short period of time, to be fully effective. But here is a question. I don't want to downplay the vaccines, because when you have a virus, the only solution to a virus medically is a vaccine, right? There might be other solutions, trying to let it peter out and all the rest of it, but we respond to viruses quite normally with vaccines. So once we reach the zenith of the Australian population actually getting this vaccine, what is the next bus stop? Because there's going to be a lot of people out there, these so-called experts and a lot of politicians and a lot of people in the media and a lot of the people who are living in some sort of abject fear about this virus, that'll be saying, oh, we can't return things to normal. We still have to have some form of restriction. Well, the question is, why? What's the next bus stop after we reach the zenith of vaccination in Australia? There is no other bus stop. We've got the world plus COVID-19 plus vaccines. And that means we've got to get back to normal, full normal, no COVID vaccination passports, no more forced masking, no more of these stupid rules, which really are just an imposition on our freedom.
Yes. And, a lot of the people who scrutinize, they say that it's not mandatory. Legally speaking, it's not mandatory. So they think we're crazy for talking about the fact that, it's seemingly mandatory. But legally speaking, it's not. But it seems like the narrative and the language being used by HR companies, by the media, even by politicians like Greg Hunt and Scott Morrison, it's not legally mandatory, but it is very coercively suggestive. How do you feel about that language being used?
Well, people can say whatever they like, but what's going to really make the world a difference is what is allowed to happen. And the Prime Minister has said that this vaccine is not going to be mandatory. We don't mandate any other vaccines. But if we have public schools that exclude students because they don't vaccinate, then it is effectively mandatory for all kids to be vaccinated. If we have a situation where you can't jump on a form of public transport or a flight because you're not vaccinated, then we really have segregated the Australian population into two classes. One class that's not allowed to go on public transport. It reminds me of segregationist America back in the 1950s and before that.
Wow.
You could go on and on. Imagine having a situation where you can't get employed in a major firm or a restaurant or whatever because you don't have a vaccine. That would be ultimately forced vaccinations in this country. Forced because government actually didn't stop all of these outrageous attempts at discrimination against people who, for whatever reason, have freely decided not to get the vaccine. And you know why they might have freely decided it? They might have just said, you know what, I'm 30-something, I'm 40-something, and my chance of dying from this virus is about 2 or 3 out of 1,000. I'm willing to take that chance. That's a legitimate thing. It's completely legitimate for anyone to say that.
I'll just confirm that you, as a member of Parliament, will, I imagine, do whatever you can to make sure there isn't this division in society and unvaccinated people aren't secluded from society.
Yeah, well, this isn't a new rodeo for me. I actually wrote to the Prime Minister and Health Minister back in December when I started hearing outfits like Qantas saying they were going to deny service to people who didn't have the vaccine, when I heard the Queensland Education Minister saying that she would consider not having kids in Queensland schools that aren't vaccinated. And I wrote to him saying, look, you have said this is not going to be mandatory. Now we have the prospects of state governments and also major corporations and perhaps even federal government departments coming up with these coercive measures which basically make the vaccine mandatory. And that needs to be nipped in the bud if what we said, that this was not going to be forced, this was not going to be mandatory, this is going to be voluntary, if what we said is going to ring true on the ground. And I firmly believe that that needs to be followed up. I am going to be railing against any attempt to have any vaccination passport, digital passport, whatever you'd like to call it, that segregates Australians into haves and have-nots and denies them jobs, denies them services and corporations, denies them access to certain areas. That is just wrong. It is discriminatory. And the whole concept in itself is an invasion of our privacy, because our medical history, our medical records should be sacrosanct. The only people that should know our own medical history is us, our doctors, and whom we choose to tell that medical history to. No one else has a right to know it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I speak for all my members in thanking you for standing up for us in this particular case. Now, I'm just going to make a statement and then you can respond. So Greg Hunt told the public that COVID vaccines are safe and effective, yet on health.gov.au, it explicitly states that, and I quote, we don't know how effective the COVID-19 vaccines are at preventing the spread of the virus. How is the health minister able to make statements which are so greatly at odds with the Department of Health? So basically it seems like he actually says explicitly that they're safe and effective. Then you go onto the TGA website and it says they're not sure how effective it actually is. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Look, I'm probably not going to get too deep into the vaccines because, quite honestly, I haven't researched the efficacies of these vaccines, and I haven't researched the adverse impacts as much as what I probably would like to have. Other people I know have. I know Matt Canavan, Senator Matthew Canavan from Queensland, was pointing out for a long time the risks associated with AstraZeneca. He was being derided for that, and now, quite honestly, has been vindicated. Same with Craig Kelly, for that matter. His views around AstraZeneca have been vindicated, and so there quite honestly was a problem with AstraZeneca. It was causing blood clots, and we were told at once upon a time that it wasn't causing blood clots, and then surprise, surprise, it is causing blood clots, and now it's been suspended, effectively suspended for usage in under 50s, because the risk of getting those blood clots or some adverse effect is much higher than some debilitating response or death from COVID-19 for that age group. So, I think that caution's always advised when something's rushed, and that's why people should have individual choice in this. As for me, I'm not getting a vaccine anytime soon, and I'll be honest. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to see what happens with this rollout. I'm going to wait for a traditional vaccine to hit the market here. A traditional vaccine is coming. It's called Novavax, and I will see what the research says about Novavax, and I will see what the effects are of Novavax before I go about getting that vaccination myself. That's my right. It's my right as a human being to say no. I want to wait. I don't want someone jabbing me with something at this point in time.
Oh, a lot of people listening would agree with that. I appreciate you admitting that you couldn't comment on the whole thing. And I will just say that imagine as a citizen like myself, when we see Craig Kelly being vindicated and that other gentleman for what they're saying, and then it turns out they're right, and they were told off by the Scott Morrison and Greg Hunt and things like that, and then it turns out they were right. Obviously we lose a bit of faith and trust in what these people say on TV and so forth. And it's pretty difficult. What would you say to people who are feeling like they can't trust what people like Scott Morrison are saying?
Well, to try and not be partisan, because I'm obviously in the same government as Scott Morrison and Greg Hunt, and was in the same government as Craig Kelly. They at least said that Craig had the right to offer that different point of view, and that Senator Matt Canavan had the right to offer that different point of view, whereas others in the parliament, notably the Shadow Health Minister Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese, were saying no, they needed to be silenced and shut up and booted out and all the rest of it. And then the media decided to jump on and just absolutely pillory and try and humiliate and denigrate these people for having a different point of view, which turns out was actually the correct point of view, that there were concerns around AstraZeneca and the blood clots that it caused in people. So I think out of all of it, I could be partisan and say those people in the parliament who said that these people should be shut up and silenced, that they need to have a long, hard look at themselves. But the media in particular, the mainstream media, need to have a long, hard look at themselves in particular, because the kind of response they've had to people who have offered different points of view and sounded warnings, it has been absolutely diabolical, their reaction. It has been absolutely diabolical to public debate and discussion and democracy.
Amen to that. And do you think any of these media outlets, or even people that said that AstraZeneca was fine, do you think any of them will be made accountable for saying these things with 100% conviction and leading us down the wrong path?
Yeah, I never see too many people apologising for mistakes in public life, so I won't be holding my breath on that.
It's a real shame, because the people would really love to see some real honest apologies with our leaders. It would be such a breath of fresh air.
Well, let me just say, I actually apologise. I apologise that I didn't join with others in raising concerns about AstraZeneca. I heard them. I thought I don't know enough to comment on it, and so I didn't. But the people who were speaking, like Senator Matt Canavan, knew their stuff, and I should have instinctively trusted what they were saying about it. So I apologise for not speaking out about it.
Did you know that the vaccine trial is actually scheduled to end in 2023? Have you ever seen that written on the TGA website?
No, I have not seen that information, and I guess the fact that trials are going on while they're being rolled out is a bit alarming in itself. Having said that, I understand emergency provisions. We've got a pandemic. We want to roll out these vaccines quickly. I think as long as everything is out in the open about adverse impacts and all the rest of it, and that free discussion and debate is allowed in this, and more importantly, that it's voluntary with no coercion, then my concern around the vaccine regime is lessened. But the more we try and stomp on dissent, stomp on debate, stomp on discussion, and also stomp on this idea that it's going to be voluntary by the coercive corporate measures or coercive government measures, the more I'm concerned about all of this.
Now, you might not answer this, but I'm just going to ask it anyway.
Go for it.
And like I said, I could edit it out. But I mean, they're using the word pandemic. Do you really think we're in a pandemic?
I think it's I think we are in a pandemic, but I think it's a baby pandemic in comparison to others that we've had. A lot of people have talked about the Spanish flu pandemic. If we were living through the Spanish flu pandemic, we would have 200 million people dead already. There's not a touch on that. There is not a touch on that. So this is a baby pandemic, and quite honestly, it's something that people who are under 70, there is not much of a risk of death. Now, I know people who have over in the UK who have gotten COVID-19. I personally know one 66-year-old who got COVID-19. He is very overweight. He also had pneumonia about 10 years ago and had scarring on his lungs from it. He went through the 2 weeks. 4 of those days were absolutely terrible for him, but he pulled through. And I sort of think to myself, well, boy, when you've got a very unfit 66-year-old who previously had has had problems with his lungs because of pneumonia in the past, that's must be something that he can actually get through it. Now, people are dying, right? People are absolutely dying of this. There's no question about that. But the average age of death in Australia, and this doesn't lessen any death. Any death is sad, is tragic, right? It is. But it just must be remembered that the average age of death from COVID-19 in Australia is 83, I think. 83. If it's not 83, it's either one above or one less. Now, the average age in Australia is about exactly the same. So the average life expectancy around exactly the same. So, as I said again, it is a baby pandemic, and I think that there are a lot of people who have just been instilled with fear about this virus, as if they catch it, I'm absolutely going to die. Well, no, you're not. The chance of you dying is like 3 out of 1,000 or less. That's the chance of you dying. And if you're under like 30, you got better odds than that. So, I think it's a baby pandemic.
Well, I got to say, summing up what you just said, it doesn't even sound like a baby pandemic if I was listening from a third party point of view, but I'll just leave that there. But also, they're making all these emergency provisions and, bringing in things and infringing on our human rights, with masks and all this sort of stuff, all based on the fact that it's an emergency. And, the stats that you just said, I don't know.
If I can respond to that, I would say 100% that the stuff we have seen, the forced maskings, the tracing regimes, the ideas of there's going to be some COVID-19 or vaccination passports that are going to be issued, the lockdowns, which have destroyed businesses, which have destroyed livelihoods, which have destroyed people's mental health. All of that sort of stuff has just been overreach, excessive anti-freedom, anti-liberty overreach in response to this pandemic. And it could have been handled so much better. Other countries did handle it so much better. Japan handled it better. Taiwan handled it better. And you know what? They've been much maligned, but Sweden handled it better. And if people go, oh, well, there was all these deaths in Sweden. Well, was there? If you have a look at the average death rate in Sweden over the last 5 years and then compare it with last year, there's no difference. Same number of people died. So, again, I sort of just say this is a baby pandemic. You can take out of that what you want. But the reaction to this baby pandemic has been more dangerous and more disastrous for us than the virus itself.
I have two small comments to make now. I also saw that you mentioned Anzac Day on your Facebook. Did you know that in Victoria they've put a cap on only 5,500 are allowed to be in the march, and you have to register? But like later on that day, across the street at the football stadium, there's 75,000 people going to the Anzac game. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, look, I don't know how you people are tolerating things down there in Victoria. I reckon I would have been in jail by now if I lived in Victoria, without a doubt. It is just unbelievable the kind of things that have been pulled on. And, I shake my head in disappointment, not in surprise, because now it's like, well, in Victoria, anything goes, and it obviously does. But can I also just make a quick comment? I've just seen posts online on social media about Queensland. They're all patting themselves on the back in the Queensland government about how we're lifting all these restrictions. You just beat us up and then, we're going to stop beating you up now, as if we should be thankful for that. Well, one of the restrictions that I noticed they're lifting is now we can have 100 people in our homes. And I commented to someone, I said, I never really thought about the restriction that we had on people in our homes, but what the hell? How come people weren't more angry about that? Limiting the amount of people we can have in our own homes. Isn't there an old saying that, our homes are our castle? What the hell gives the right of government or anyone else to determine who or how many people we have visit us in our own homes? And that's why I just say that this whole thing has just been far more disastrous to humankind, to democracy, to freedom than the virus actually is.
The last thing I want to say is obviously Craig Kelly is now an independent because he felt like his voice was being stifled, I guess. And that's not a quote from him, by the way. But if your party tries to silence you, do you think you'll join him on the independents?
No, they won't be able to silence me.
Oh, even
other
better.
People have tried. Other people have tried and failed.
That's great. Well, obviously this video was mostly about your stance on the vaccine passport, which you've obviously answered, and we talked a little bit about Victoria and Anzac Day. Is there anything else, if there was 50,000 Australians watching right now, is there any other message that you'd like to give to them while you have their attention?
Speak up. That's my view. Like, speak up, let your voice be known. People may think there's a sense of powerlessness because all of this is happening around them, but we aren't powerless. We are still a democracy, and politicians, particularly come election times, need to know that there are people who are angry about this imposition on our freedom. So speak up. That's all I'd say. Speak up, and continue to speak up.
I am grateful to George for speaking the truth and being outspoken, which is what so many of Australians wish more and more members would do. If you appreciate his candour, how about you send him a thank you email? Go to his website at georgechristensen.com.au and you can express your thanks through there. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.